Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Pod Hacks Only. This episode is going to be basically just updating the last episode, and then we're going to give updated predictions on divisions and awards that will come out at the end of the year. I figured it'd be a good time now. As I said, I wanted to wait at least 20 games in before I started to revise a lot of my different predictions and all those different things. We are at 20 games plus for most teams. There's some teams obviously like the Cardinals, the Marlins, Phillies, those sort of things that have yet to play 20 games, but the majority of teams have gotten there, and even the Marlins and the Phillies are starting to get that way towards 20 games. The Cardinals themselves will be back to playing baseball. We're going to talk about all of that in this episode. We do have other updated news on as far as COVID tests, positive tests, some good, some bad. So we're going to talk about all this in the episode. Let's go to a quick anchor ad and then we'll get into the episode. All right, let's start off this episode by talking about those St. Louis Cardinals. There is now a plan to get them back into the swing of things, right? They've only played 5 games. As I've mentioned, a lot of teams have played 20, so they have a lot of games to make up, 15 plus games to make up, which is going to be seemingly impossible, but it appears that we're going to give it a try. I didn't think they would for a while there, and there was talks of continuing the season without the Cardinals because of how poorly they've handled it, because of the outbreak that happened. There was talks about having the season continue, yet not letting them in the playoffs. There was talks about letting them continue, see how many games they can get in, and then going off winning percentage. All those things have kind of been, I guess, been resolved at this moment. The plan is to just play a bunch of doubleheaders, apparently. So they're going to start tonight, doubleheaders. And tonight was supposed to be the first time that all teams will be playing at the same time. That has changed, and we'll get that in a second. They will be playing a doubleheader today against the Chicago White Sox, finishing up their series tomorrow, getting their 3 games in. They are going to play a doubleheader at some point, where they play the Cubs for 3 games in Wrigley, or 3 days, I should say, because it's going to be 6 games. There's going to be 3 straight days of doubleheaders. Thankfully, again, there's the 7-inning rule. They do have player pools, and they're able to manipulate their rosters to fit that. Let's hope that of those 6 games, there is few, if hopefully none, that go into extra innings, and those games are played pretty cleanly, because that becomes dicey and troublesome for some players if they're playing that many games in that short amount of time. And you think about the arms that are being used, you think about the players' legs. That's going to be very, very interesting to see how that goes down. And they'll be doing a lot of that to try to fit in, again, as many games as possible. And I think if the Cardinals do make it through that gauntlet and they find themselves at the end in a playoff position, I think you can say they earned it at that point. I don't think people are going to be questioning it then. People were upset, again, if they played 40 games and based on winning percentage they won the division, or if they knocked some team out that won more games than them. So there was a lot of different solutions being tossed around. The one idea that I kind of liked is that they had to win or play a certain amount of games, say 50 games, to be considered a division champion. At least all 40 games against their division rivals, I think, for sure. Right? I would hope that their biggest push is not necessarily that they play enough of the AL Central teams, but they play enough of the NL Central teams, right? Like the teams in their division. If they do that, then I feel a little more comfortable about them being division champions. Other than that, if they do 40, they don't play all the games against division, I can see them maybe being one of the 2 wildcard spots. Because if you're in the 2 wildcard spots, it means you finished 3rd or lower in your division, and you don't really have a gripe of whether you get in or out at that point anyways. So that has been the solution so far with the Cardinals. They will be starting again tonight. As I mentioned, we were supposed to have all the teams playing tonight. It's not going to happen because there was a positive test one more time in the NL Central, and it is the Cincinnati Reds this time. We don't know who the player is. We don't know if there is more positive tests. They're all going through tests right now. Everybody's quarantined. They've been separated. They're doing contact tracing to see who this player has been around. More information will be out hopefully soon, and we'll get to understand, again, what's going on there. Hopefully it's closer to... They've figured this thing out. Right now it's the 3rd team. It's been 1 player, so hopefully they have figured this things out. They did the right thing of postponing tonight's game, pushing it to tomorrow for a possible Sunday doubleheader, which seems most likely to happen. And they, again, things are played a little bit better than they did with the Cardinals, because it was handled so poorly with the Cardinals. The Marlins were handled a bit poorly, but better, as they were able to not be out so long. The Cardinals went out so much longer than Miami was. Let's hope it's just, again, today they figure it out. There's contact tracing. They have isolated players, and they get to the point where they can play tomorrow and feel comfortable doing so, right? You don't want to go out there and play with the question of whether or not somebody does have it. Now you have a spread among 2 teams, and now it becomes a bigger and bigger issue. It's going to be interesting to see how MLB handles it moving forward. Not great, though. I mean, like I said, the one region with that handled it the best is the West. The West has had 0 teams with an outbreak or a positive test, which is crazy to think because those are the teams that are traveling the most. As I mentioned, travel was the biggest question. Like in summer camp, teams are doing just fine. They start traveling, things become different. The AL West and the NL West have the most travel between their Texas teams and their Seattle team. They have the most travel by far among any other region, yet they've done so good so far. Hopefully, again, knock on wood, that keeps up. We don't want to see any more outbreaks anywhere, and hopefully MLB is finally getting an idea of how to contain it if there is one, or if there's a positive test or two. Again, you don't want to see what happens with the Cardinals. And one more real quick thing on the Cardinals, a very interesting note to say is that they will be traveling to start off with, and their travel is going to consist of not trains, not buses, but of a caravan of vehicles where they will be driving themselves. Speaking of caravans, the Indians, as we mentioned, Zach Plesac went out after a night in Detroit, decided he was going to come back in, was caught, was sent home in a rental car. You need to drive yourself home. Clevenger went home with the team on the bus, even though he had been out as well. Kind of lied to the players. He was sent home. Zach Plesac puts out an Instagram video blaming the media a bit, and it was very disappointing from Plesac, and that's the words from Terry Francona, their manager. Disappointing to see the video that Plesac put out. A lot of people think that the message didn't come across the way that he had hoped, and that wasn't what he was trying to portray. The way the message that came out wasn't exactly what he was trying to portray. It was just very poorly handled and probably shouldn't have been put out to begin with. They come back right after some negative tests. They get cleared. They come back and they meet their teammates. Their teammates obviously disappointed. We've had Plutko come out and say some things that he's very disappointed. Shane Bieber, the same thing. They come back. They ask the team, how do you want to handle this? Their solution was, let's option these two guys, even though they are really good. Like Plesac was having a great year. Clevenger obviously is Cy Young caliber talent. They say we're going to option him, right? Clevenger has one option left. Plesac has 3 options left. So, which means is that they sent him to their minor league camp. So they're not going to be playing with the Indians initially. They're going to be sent to the minor league camp for a little bit, and then they're going to see what happens moving forward. Hopefully for their sake and for the Indians' sake, they are able to come back up. They do learn their lesson, and they do those things. Because again, you just can't be reckless. You got to keep it together. August, September, October. Keep it together, guys. Let's make a run at this thing, right? Lindor hasn't quite got going yet. The bullpen has looked great. Offensively, hopefully Franmil Reyes starts to get going. He just hit a ball a country mile yesterday. I am not sure if it's landed yet. It's still in orbit, maybe. Because he crushed that ball yesterday. And if he could get going, that will help them figure out what's going on in that outfield, because that outfield is their biggest weakness, and it's not even close. Like, their outfield is a travesty to what is otherwise a really, really good team. And if they can get any sort of offense, again, hopefully Franmil Reyes, that team can be really good, but you need guys like Plesac, you need guys like Clevenger in fold to go with Bieber, to go with Plutko, to go with a couple of their other arms that have been really great for them so far. The A's and Astros. So at the last episode, there hadn't been news yet of the punishment that was coming down towards the A's and the Astros for that fight with the Laureano charging the Astros dugout. The episode came out, then the news broke. Laureano was going to get 6 games, and the Alex Cintrone, the Astros hitting coach, was to get 20 games. Cintrone accepted his punishment, and he took 20 games, and he's serving that right now. Laureano decided to fight it a bit. He was offered 4 games. He took the 4 games, serving it yesterday. He's got 3 more days, then he will be back in fold for the A's. A lot of people don't think he should be punished. I mean, I don't know if he was wrong, and during a regular season, I may say that it should have been no punishment, right? Or even less of a punishment, but considering that he sprinted at a dugout, he didn't have that self-control, considering we're in the middle of a pandemic, I think 4 games is right. I mean, I think 6 games was even right, but 4 games seems a little bit better. So I'm not mad about the punishment there. Cintrone, for sure, with his actions, being a coach, deserved to be the hammer dropped on him, and 20 games seems right in that regard as well. This is one of the few times that MLB and Rob Manfred, I feel, has handled the situation correctly. They've been so poor at handling these things that you almost expect it, but they did the right thing. I think this was justified in both the punishments. And that's pretty much all the news kind of right now going on around the league. There is some funny little tidbits going on, like Zach Greinke sitting among the crowd, all the different fans, cutouts, right? And he also was on the mound the other day telling the catcher what he wanted to throw because they weren't on the same page, and then just yelling at him what the throw's supposed to be, or the pitch was supposed to be anyways, and then getting the Dubnak, Dubon of the San Francisco Giants to pop out anyways. So Zach Greinke, just always a character. If you don't know about the hijinks of Zach Greinke, I suggest you check him out. There was, I believe, the Pitching Ninja created a video like an ode to Zach Greinke. Very well worth the watch over there. Again, because we covered the show on Tuesday, we had it last Saturday, there's not a whole lot of news between here and now. Those are mostly updates. Going to go into, again, the updated playoff predictions and awards, because, again, I think we're far enough into the season where we kind of get an idea of where teams are sitting. You're going to start with the NL for me. I think you got to go to the West because, just like at the beginning of the year, it's the most obvious one to pick, the Dodgers. The Dodgers are going to win that division. Even if they kind of struggled a bit to start the season, which I don't even know if you can call it a struggle. They just weren't getting a lot of hits from guys that you thought they would get hits from, i.e. Bellinger, Betts. That has changed. Betts just had a 3-run home run game the other night against the Padres. Bellinger last night has 2 home runs, monster home runs against the Angels. Hopefully those are signs of things to come. Corey Seager goes back in that lineup, helps those things out because he's been so good at the plate this year. Gavin Lux still hasn't been in fold. He's building up strength and getting a bit of the into the rhythm again of playing the game. He is a big piece of this team. Let's not forget that. So the Dodgers, clear-cut favorites. I still think they're 14-7. They've yet to lose a series. They win again tonight. That will continue on as they play the Mariners next, which I don't imagine they're going to lose a series to the Mariners. So they're going to go 3-4 weeks, a month into the season without losing a series. They've tied a series, right? They split 2-2 with the Padres last week. They split 2-2 to start the year against the Giants, and that's as close as teams have come. Dodgers, clear favorites. Kershaw looked great last night. He reached 94 miles per hour. The bullpen's been amazing. Walker Buehler's building up strength. He goes again tonight against the Angels. I'm curious to see how he navigates that Angels lineup. Kershaw did really well against them last night. So Dodgers, they're the favorites. They had to be the favorites. If I'm going to go a number 2 team, because that's what it is right now, right? There's 2 teams going in each division. You got the 1 and 2, and then you got to get the wild card teams. Second place team, I believe, will be the Rockies. The Rockies have some bullpen issues starting to rise a little bit, but they have some veteran bats. I think that's the difference between them and the Padres, is that they have some seasoned players. Danielson and Lamet and Chris Paddock have been good for the Padres, but they're really young. Tatis Jr., all those guys, but they're really young. Cronenworth. You look at the Rocky side of it, Chuck Nasty and Charlie Blackmon, right? He's old veteran guy, and he just continues to get it done. He's talking about hitting 400 for the season. Nolan Arenado, veteran guy that's crushing. Trevor Story, who's saying, don't forget about me when you're talking about shortstops in the league. I mean, you're looking at Seager, Tatis Jr., and Trevor Story, probably 3 of the best shortstops in baseball, and they're all playing in the same division. Very fun to watch. They got some, again, David Dahl. They have some few guys that are playing just really well, and they're veteran guys. They've been there. They've done that. The biggest question for them was going to be their pitching. Well, I think they've kind of solved that a little bit, right, in the sense of Herman Marquez looks really good. Kyle Freeland looks like the Kyle Freeland of 2018, where he was nasty. I mean, I don't think people remember him dominating the Chicago Cubs in that playoff series, right, the wild card game, where he went out there and he dominated the Cubs. He looked great, and that's what he kind of looks like right now. Matt Kemp's come back and played really well for them. I just think because of the veteran leadership that they have there, that's going to be the difference between them and the Padres. Because talent-wise, you can split hairs and you can go either way. I'm going to go with the veteran guys in Colorado and say that they're going to be the number 2 team in the West. You go to the Central, it seems like it's the Cubs, and then whoever wants to show up outside of that. The Brewers have their issues, as we've talked about. Their bullpens look great. Brandon Woodruff as their starter has looked great. They don't have much behind him. It needs to do a little bit better. Christian Yelich is getting going, and if he gets hot, the Brewers could be that number 2 team. Outside of that, the Reds have some big issues. Now they have a positive test. Don't know how that's going to affect them. The bullpen has been a disaster. Offensively, they've looked great. Like, Winker has been crushing it, and it used to be Castellanos was their MVP type candidate. He's struggled a bit, not necessarily struggled, but he's hit a bit of a roadblock last few games, a bit of a slump, which happens. I'm sure he'll be fine. Winker stepped into that role and been their MVP type guy, just crushing the ball. They have a great lineup up and down. Their starting pitching has been ridiculous. And you want to say, like, looking at this, their offense and their starting rotation, that for sure, they're not only are they a playoff team, but they're a legitimate threat for a World Series. Their bullpen has been that bad where they're not even in the picture right now. It's amazing to me how many of the, especially the National League side of contenders, has just been struggling in the pen. It is not just, again, the Reds. You look at the Cubs, struggles. What happens with Kimbrel back there? You look at the Phillies. What's going to happen with that Phillies bullpen? It's just atrocious. So that's going to be big questions for them. The Padres and the Rockies have also had their struggles with the pen, especially as of late, as I mentioned, for the Rockies. So I guess the biggest thing is the trade deadline comes up at the end of the month. I'm curious to see which relievers are moved to what contenders, because that's going to be the difference, because these guys, again, there's a lot of contenders that are knocking on the door with a lot of good ball players, just don't have the relief pitchers. So I'm looking at guys like Archie Bradley. I'm looking at guys like possibly Brandon Workman, maybe with the Red Sox, if they're willing to let him go. Maybe Edwin Diaz or Jeurys Familia with the Mets. Are they willing to let Diaz go? I'm sure they're more than willing to let go. I mean, they're more willing to let go of Familia than they are of Diaz. Either one of those guys could be a big piece for a team. So those are names that I'm just off the top of my head. There might be more out there that you can think of. But those guys, big part of that. So the second team in the Central, as we go back to it, I don't know. The Cardinals, possibly, depending on what they look like. I'm going to go with the Reds. I'm hoping the Reds, because there's just so much talent on that team. Just too talented not to be in the postseason. But the Central on the NL side has been disappointment, to say the least. An extreme disappointment, to say the most. Don't know what to expect from them. It's the Cubs, and then you can flip a coin. I'm going to go with the Reds. They were my pick at the beginning of the year. I'm going to stick with them. I think they're going to figure out that bullpen. Lorenzen, Garrett, those guys have to figure it out. They can add a reliever. If they're able to work a deal out for a Diaz or a Workman, then look out, because that's what they need. They need a closer that come in and lock things down. Raciel Iglesias hasn't been that. They move him to the 8th inning possibly, or maybe even the 7th inning, take some pressure off of him with Garrett there as well. That bullpen looks a lot better at that point. I'm going to go with Cincinnati as the number 2 team. You go to the East, and the East, again, is the hardest one to think of, because we've talked about it in past episodes. In the NL side, the West has been the clear best, right? They've been the best division in the NL, and it's not even close. The Dodgers have looked like the Dodgers. The Padres have looked really good. The Rockies have looked really good. Diamondbacks are starting to come back around. They've looked better of late. That lineup is really good there with both Martes. Peralta's looked pretty good. Christian Vasquez has looked pretty good for them. They have Eduardo Escobar. So that lineup is really good. Rotation-wise, they're a young rotation that needs to kind of get going. Mad Bum's been hurt and hasn't pitched well whenever he was healthy. So I don't know if he was fully healthy to start with. Hopefully he can get healthy and help them out. Robbie Ray needs to figure something out, because Gallen and Kelly have looked great for them. So the Diamondbacks aren't necessarily out of it anyway. So I've talked about Archie Bradley possibly being a reliever on the move. Maybe he is. Maybe he's picked up for somebody that can help them out in that rotation. That's going to be very interesting to watch as well. So the West has looked really good. Again, I think 3, maybe even 4 teams get into the postseason in the West. You look at the East. The Braves looked like the Braves, right? The number 2 team in the NL behind the Dodgers. And then Soroka goes out. Fultonevich was terrible. They release him. Fried has looked good. What do they look like behind him? The rotation has all of a sudden become a question mark. They've worked hard the last few years to build it as a young rotation. Looked really good. Was one of their strengths. They've worked hard to build that bullpen behind him. Bullpens look better, right? With adding Will Smith, they added Shane Green last year. Now the rotation is in disarray because of injuries, and it's just a tough look. Offensively and defensively, there's a lot of talent. They got a few players that need to get going a little bit before it's too late. They still lead the East, but you're not necessarily sold on them. The one team in the East, which is surprising, that's looked the most consistent, has been the Miami Marlins. Do the Miami Marlins hold on to it? It's too early for me, especially until they get Alcantara back and some of those guys. Brian Anderson has looked great for them. They have a few other guys that have come up and look just great. I mean, they just go out there and they win games, and it's been very fun to watch. They had a game against the Blue Jays the other day, which was a joy for most baseball fans, I think, to watch those guys just slug it out, go into extra innings. Marlins right now are in the mix of things. Again, it's too early for me to jump on the Finns bandwagon. I did say at the beginning of the year, though, and at the end of last year, the Marlins have a lot of good young talent and could be some issues for some teams. So I'm going to say that I was right in that regard. Not going to pick them yet for a postseason spot. I'm going to say the Braves. I'm going to say the Phillies. Phillies, again, as we mentioned, they need to figure out that bullpen. I figured they'll pull the trigger sometime here pretty soon. Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto have been great for them. Gregorius needs to be a little bit more consistent. You'd like to see that. You'd like to see Segura be a little bit more consistent. Reese Hopkins, get him going a little bit. Aaron Nola has looked great, and that rotation has looked great. But they're in the same spot as the Reds, where most of the team has lived up to the expectation. The bullpen has been just a disaster. Just terrible. Again, they've been so bad. They've been two of the worst bullpens in the league, which is saying something as we've talked about the East, because you still have the Nationals there. What do the Nationals look like? I don't know where they fit in that mix. The NL Central and the NL East are probably the two harder ones to pick. Outside of the Cubs, I feel pretty confident about the Bravos figuring those things out. But they have 3-4 teams behind them that are, if it was a regular wild card year, I wouldn't pick them for the postseason. But because of what it is now, they're in the mix of things. I mean, I think pretty much everybody's in the mix outside of maybe the Giants, the Pirates, the Mariners, and the Red Sox. Other than that, I mean, a lot of these teams are sitting right there in the middle of things. And it's not necessarily because they've played that well. It's because the other teams around them just haven't played that great. If we want to talk about the Central being a bit of a disaster, the East, the same thing, right? The Marlins are kicking everybody's butt. The Phillies' bullpens look terrible. The Nationals have been inconsistent at best. Juan Soto coming back helps that. Victor Robles needs to be that number 2 guy for them. Needs to be that. The Trey Turner needs to be that guy, and they haven't been yet. Their rotation hasn't looked dominant, right? Strasburg goes, I believe, tonight. He was supposed to go yesterday due to some rain. I think it was moved back. Or, he pitched an inning last night. Sorry. Scherzer has looked iffy. I'm sure those guys will be fine, but Anibal Sanchez, what does he look like? Patrick Corbin has been their best rotation piece yet. It's interesting. They may get in, right? And if they do get in, they're dangerous, right? It's the same with the Reds. If the Reds get in, they are dangerous in a 3-game set. I think I've told people the Dodgers, like last year, right, in a 5-gamer against the Nationals, that was the one chance that people would have to beat them. The Nationals did just that. If you're going to beat a team like the Dodgers this year, or even like the A's or the Twinkies or the Yankees on the AL side, if you're going to beat them, it's going to be in that 3-game series. You have to beat them twice. You can throw every pitcher you have at them, and the Nationals are well equipped for that. Same with the Reds, because they have so many starting pitchers that are so much better than their bullpen. What do they look beyond that, though? Because if they don't get in, they can't do that. And if they don't face a team like the Dodgers early on and they have to face them in a long series, do they have enough to be competitive with them? I don't know if the answer is yes right now. It's still early, so things can change. But as of right now, the Dodgers, it's hard to pick teams behind them. The wild card teams, if we're going to go there, right? So I'm going Dodgers and Rockies, Cubs and Reds, and then I'm going to go Braves and Phils. The wild card team of the Padres, I think, are an obvious choice there. It's just, I have to twist my arm because it's so hard to pick that other wild card team. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say that the Nationals, just because they're the defending champions, get that last wild card spot. I don't feel confident in that at all. But let's move on. I've done ranting about the NL side. Let's go on to the AL side. AL side's a little bit easier. It's the same as it was last year, right? The AL is very much top heavy. Those last wild card spots, they're going to be very hard to predict all the way up into the end. Because you're looking at, right, 16 teams of 30. So there a lot of middle teams just kind of sit there. Especially in 60 games, there's not much time to separate those middle type teams. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now you're looking at the American League side now. So you're going to go with the West again, as I started with the West and the National League side. I think it's going to be the A's. The Astros have shown some struggles. Some big-time struggles. Greinke's look good, but outside of that, where do they look as far as the pitching staff goes? Javier has looked really, really good for them as a young pitcher in Houston. Verlander is starting to throw again, so he'll be back soon, which is a big boost for them. And he could be a difference for them getting in the postseason. I don't want to get them out of the postseason, right? Yordan Alvarez has returned as well. He just hit a big home run last night. That's going to help that offense get going. And that offense, again, we've talked about the cheating scandal. We've talked about all those different things. Nobody that knows baseball is saying that they're not talented enough to be really good. That offense is still very, very dangerous. Whether they know what pitch is coming or not, that was what's frustrating, is that they were already really good. They were already feared by most pitchers, and now you know what's happening. It's a big, big issue. They're going to be fine, but they're not going to beat the A's. The A's are just, they've started hot, and they're going to continue to be hot. Really good team. I'm curious to see, right, AJ Puck has been hurt, and now you have Frankie Montas, who was hurt, really good for them to start the year. I mean, he's got to be in the AL Cy Young conversation. He scratched last night. Luzardo fits in for him on last notice. Doesn't look too great. They lose one of their first games in a while. But the A's they look like the team to beat in the West. I don't see a team beating them outside of that. Behind them, you got to go with the Astros. I would love to say a team like the Angels or the Rangers, but you can't. There's just not enough going on for those two teams. The Angels, man, I keep holding on to hope that they're going to make the postseason and that they're going to be right in the thick of things. It just doesn't look great early on, especially with pitching. Outside of a couple bright spots, or one really big bright spot we'll get into in a second. So we'll go A's and Astros. A's 1, Astros 2. On the Central side, it's Twins. I wanted to go in the Indians. They just, we've talked about it earlier, right? The two pitchers that got go out because they decided to go out in Detroit. We've talked about the outfield struggles offensively. Francisco Lindor needs to get going and look like Lindor at the plate. Hopefully that happens. The Twins seem to be the team to beat. They've got some really, really good starting pitching going on for them with Barrios, with Maeda, with Dobnak. Those things moving forward should be great for them. They have Mr. Rogers' neighborhood closing out games for them. The back end of that bullpen. Twins are going to be competing with the A's and the Yankees for the best record in the American League. Behind them, I'm going to go with the Indians still. I still think the Indians are too good of a team to fall behind some of these other teams. I know Detroit's been right there with them, but you can't really trust Detroit. Similar to the Marlins and Baltimore, as we'll get into in the next division. They're hard to trust this early on. If we're 40 games in and they're still right there, then I'll start to consider them legitimate playoff contenders. As of right now, you're going Twins, you're going Indians. East, top two teams. I mean, it's the same. I could have told you this at the beginning of the year. I'll probably tell you this middle of the year. Probably tell you this at the end of the year. A's, Astros, Twins, Indians, Yankees, Rays. That's just where we're at right now. The AL is just so top heavy and a bit more predictable, where the NL is a bit of a mess behind the Dodgers. So Dodgers, and then you have a bunch of teams that are pretty even. Then you have a level below that are a bunch of teams that are pretty even. So I mean, not that they're not dangerous behind the Dodgers, as they could beat them as we've seen last year. And especially in a shortened season, just you're looking at talent-wise, top to bottom, and yeah, I mean the Dodgers are the most easy prediction in the NL side. At the AL side, it's easy to predict almost every division. The Yankees are probably gonna win the East, although again, I'm not pulling off my Rays pick just yet. I'm gonna pick the Yankees right now, but I almost want to take the Rays as the one team. They're going to pick them as the two team as they get going. Brandon Lowe's look really good for them. That pitching staff is starting to get going again, which is good to see. The Yankees, on their hand, have started off really, really good. And Garrett Cole has been every bit of what you wanted to see from Garrett Cole. Looked great last night against the Red Sox, although the Red Sox look terrible. My issue now is, so Gleyber Torres, he needs to be the Gleyber Torres we saw last year in the postseason. He still has time to get going. Tauchman hasn't looked great forward. Looked okay. I mean, they haven't looked bad. They've just looked okay. Hicks needs to get going. The two guys that were leading the way for sure, MVP candidates, Judge, Stanton, both now in the IL, and that's the big issue with the Yankees. These guys are constantly getting hurt. They're never on the field all the time. Here we go again. They're hurt again. Still, the Yankees have looked good. The rotation's been a mess. Still, there's too many holes in the Yankees. I don't see how people think the Yankees are just this unstoppable force that's for sure going to win the World Series. I don't see them as that. I don't. I see them as a team that is a legitimate World Series contender. I see them as one of the favorites for sure. But a foregone conclusion that they're going to win a World Series or even be in a World Series, I'm not there yet. I need to see more at the rotation. The bullpen has looked better this year. I think they've switched some roles around. They've stopped putting guys in bad situations and got them going in the right direction where they were 2 years ago, which has helped that bullpen out. The next man up, and these guys continue to come up and just mash. I don't know if that continues. I mean, I don't know if you can count on that all the time. You need your stars to be stars. You need them to be those guys. They brought up Clint Frazier. He looked really good in that position. They're really good, again, favorites. Not sold on them being this unstoppable force. I'm not sold on them even running away with this division with the Rays right behind them, who have looked a lot better. They were in a 6-game win streak before being beat last night by the Blue Jays. So Yankees and then Rays, my picks. The wild card teams behind those 6 teams are a little bit tougher to pick. I would love to see the Angels in one of those spots. I'd love to see the Blue Jays. Baltimore is sitting right there in one of those spots. Tigers are kind of sitting right there. Rangers, they're all right in the mix there. It's hard for me to pick. I'm going to just say the Angels because that's just wishful thinking, I'm sure. And then I'm going to pick Baltimore just for the fun of it. I mean, I would love to see the Angels and the Blue Jays. Those would be my 2 picks. If I were to pick teams that I want to see in those spots, Angels and Blue Jays, I'm going to say Detroit just for the fun of it. All right, time now for the predictions as far as the awards go, right? We did the award prediction at the beginning of the year. We're going to do the award prediction now to go as we're 20 games in. It's the third of the way through the season. At least most teams are, so we mentioned. The AL Cy Young is where I'm starting. Garrett Cole, Lance Lynn, Dylan Bundy, Shane Bieber are my 4 main contenders. As I've mentioned, there's others that are right in the mix and could find themselves pushing some of these guys out as we move on. Garrett Cole has been the favorite for most people. And I'm going to read you Garrett Cole's numbers real quick. He's pitched in 5 games. He has 1 complete game, which was a rained out shortened game. I think it was 6 or 7 innings. 29 and a third innings pitched, 34 Ks, 5 walks, which is great. 4-0, 2.76 ERA, which is pretty good. 0.85 WHIP, great. 3.64 FIP. He's given up 9 home runs and has a 3.79 xFIP. Those are not good numbers as we're going to get into. And one WAR. He has been good. I don't know if he's been this dominant, unstoppable force that people really think he is if you look at the advanced metrics of the numbers. Still, I'm not too worried about him. So I think that's why he still has to be kind of one of the favorites. My favorite and my pick so far for the American League is Shane Bieber. He's looked amazing. He has 43 Ks to start the year, which is unbelievable in 27 and 2/3 innings. 5 walks to go with those 43 strikeouts. A 1.63 ERA, a 0.76 WHIP, 2.55 FIP, and the most impressive is a 1.85 xFIP. 1.2 WAR. The other two guys we're going to talk about real quick have a higher WAR. Bieber has the best xFIP and FIP of the bunch. And if you remember from the terminology episode, FIP is fielding independent pitcher. So they're trying to determine what his ERA would look like if he had the best fielding behind him, right? Take away all errors, take away, if you put like all the Gold Glovers, all the best fielders in the league behind him, what does that look like comparative to other players, right? You're taking away the impact of the fielders behind him, just what the pitcher is doing. That's what it determines. xFIP, you put an X on it, just is if you put him in certain stadiums, how does that change, right? Because some pitchers pitch in a hitter stadium, some pitchers pitch in a pitching stadium, ball fly different in different areas. This is what the FIP and xFIP are trying to determine, is what do they look like themselves, not with, again, who they have behind them or where they're playing. So a 1.85 xFIP is unbelievable. Lance Lynn and Dylan Bundy, those are the two surprise picks that I'm putting in here because they deserve it, frankly, through 5 games of the year. There are 4 games for Bundy, 5 games for Lance Lynn. Lynn just threw a complete game against the Rockies. A really good Rockies team. He threw a lot of innings. He was throwing 8 innings, threw a lot of pitches. They bring him out for the 9th to face Arenado and Story and Blackman. And just shows you the confidence that the Rangers have in Lynn so far. And he's thrown 5 games. That was a complete game last night. 32 1/3 innings, 36 strikeouts, 12 walks, a little bit higher, 3.0. Record. He has a 1.11 ERA, great. 0.74 WHIP, which is also great. A 2.82 FIP, which is good. 3.92 xFIP, a little bit higher, not too bad. But he's tied for the second best WAR in all of baseball with 1.6 WAR. Who has the best WAR in all of baseball? Well, that's Dylan Bundy there in Anaheim. So we mentioned Anaheim's getting some good pitching from Bundy. If Griffin Canning can step up, they have a guy last night threw decent for them. He needs to step up. It hurts not having Ohtani be able to pitch, but it is what it is. We talked about that a bit on the last episode. Dylan Bundy, though, has been great for them. 4 games, 1 complete game, 28 2/3 innings pitched, 35 Ks, only 3 walks, 3-1, a 1.57 ERA, 0.63 WHIP, 2.22 FIP, 2.86 xFIP. And he leads baseball, all of baseball in WAR, 1.7. Bundy has looked great. I think, these are your candidates so far for the American League side of Cy Young. Shane Bieber, my favorite right now. Garrett Cole, you can't sleep on him. Again, his numbers are probably not as good as the other 3. I would probably take the other 3 numbers above Garrett Cole's at the moment. But you know who Garrett Cole is. You know how he could just stream. Right? He's won 20 straight decisions. And there's a reason behind that. And it's not just because he's had some good offense with him. Just the guy is a dominant force. I can imagine him and Beaver are going to be battling it out to go with. But it is cool to see guys like Lance Lynn and Dylan Bundy, guys have kind of traveled, have had dips in their career. Bundy was a pickup by the Angels hoping he would figure some things out, and he has, and some. Lance Lynn's an older guy, just trying to continue to go, and he's looked great. But it's going to be the Bieber-Cole train down the line, and I'm going to go with Bieber to kind of edge him out, although you can't rule out Cole ever. The NL side of things, it is 2 Reds pitchers leading the way, and you can honestly throw in Luis Castillo, who I didn't include in here in this as well. There are some other National League pitchers that I really wanted to add. And there's some American League pitchers like Zach Greinke, and the list can go on about who I wanted to add there. I think those are just the 4 guys that stood out to me. These are the 4 guys that kind of stand out to me, starting with Sonny Gray. Again, Sonny Gray's another guy who traveled a bit. He was in New York, looked terrible. Goes to Cincinnati, has looked great. This year is no exception. 5 games, 30.2 innings pitched, 45 strikeouts. And Bieber, we mentioned, started leading the way with 43 in the American League side. Sonny Gray has 45 in 30 innings. Just crazy. 9 walks, 4-1. He has a 2.05 ERA, 0.91 whip. He has a 2.54 FIP, 2.22 xFIP, 2.21, sorry, and a 1.1 WAR. Those numbers, none of them look bad. All of them look Cy Young worthy. Trevor Bauer, his teammate, he's going again tonight, so he has the least amount of innings of these guys that I've talked about, of the 8 guys we're going to talk about, but he's pitching tonight, and he just looked that good. 3 games, he has a 1 shutout, but similar to Garrett Cole in his complete game, it was a short inning, so it was a shutout compared to a complete game, which is even better, right? It's all, you throw every inning, you don't give up a single run. That was a 7 inning doubleheader game where he did the shutout. He does the McGregor strut as he strikes out the last guy to end the game. He has a 19.1 innings pitched, 32 strikeouts in those 19.1. So he's on pace to have some crazy high strikeout numbers similar to Sonny Gray, Shane Bieber, Garrett Cole. You know what I mean? 4 walks to go along with that. 0.93 ERA, crazy. 0.57 WHIP, even crazier. A 1.94 FIP, 2.09 xFIP. He has the best FIP and xFIP of any of the 8 guys we're talking about, and a 1 WAR, which is lower. But again, he's only throwing in 19 innings pitched, so I'm curious to see what it looks like after tonight, as he's going to probably throw 6-7 innings. Hopefully, I mean, as long as he doesn't get beat around, and at that point he's out of the conversation. If he does throw 6-7 dominant innings, then again, I want to put him up against the other guys and see what it looks like. Well, and I'm sorry, I take that back. He's supposed to pitch tonight. I forget, the Reds game has been postponed. So when the Reds play again, hopefully Sunday, Bauer will be a part of that going forward. It looked great so far, though, through 3 games. The other guy, Jacob deGrom. And I add deGrom similar to why I add Cole. Their numbers may not be as good as these other guys, but they're still really dominant, and they're still the best 2 pitchers in all of baseball. So how do you not consider them? Even if they're close, you have to consider them, because you got to think down the line as the season goes on. Who do you have the faith in more to be dominant? Jacob deGrom, Garrett Cole. deGrom has looked good. 4 games, 22 innings, 28 Ks, 5 walks. So the Ks are a little bit lower than I would think they would be for a guy like Jacob deGrom, but I'm sure that's going to be turned around here pretty soon. He's 2-0. He has a 2.45 ERA, 0.95 WHIP. Again, 2 really good numbers. 2.44 FIP, really good. 3.11 xFIP, a little bit higher than you see from him normally. But I have no worries about deGrom, no worries about Cole. I think they're going to be right there in the mix of things as far as Cy Young Award goes. I'm going to go with deGrom and Sonny Gray as my 2 favorites on the National League side. I'm going to pick deGrom as my Cy Young. So right now, things can change, right? Buehler is getting going over there. Kershaw's looking better. There are some other pitchers around the league who have looked really good. So you cannot count any of those guys out. But Sonny Gray, deGrom leading the way so far. Trevor Bauer, if he continues to do what he does, his numbers are even better. He just doesn't have as many innings in, so I want to see more out of him first before I kind of put him in the category with those 3. A guy I decided to include in here. So I included Dylan Bundy and Lance Lynn on the other one. I'm including a guy here on the National League side for a little bit, same reasons, but a little bit different. So those guys are a little bit veteran guys that are figuring things out as they go on, but they're surprise guys. This is another surprise guy, but he's a really young guy. Danielson Lamet for the San Diego Padres. Paddock, they thought would be their ace. It's been Lamet so far. Lamet has looked great. Listen to these numbers. 5 games, 28.1 innings pitched, 36 strikeouts, 8 walks, 2-1, 1.59 ERA, 0.81 WHIP. His FIP is 2.77. His xFIP is 3.83. So his xFIP is a little bit higher, so you got to think the numbers are going to adjust themselves as we move forward. But he's got a 1-1 more, and he's worth the conversation because of how good he's looked through the first 5 games of the year. So that's my National League side. Again, I'm going to go with deGrom, Sonny Gray going down the stretch, and Cole, Bieber going down the stretch, with Bieber winning it and deGrom winning it. But those guys, all 4, I thought all 8 of them deserved a mention because of how they pitched so far. Moving on to the MVP. American League side, you have to have Trout in the discussion. Judge has been in the discussion. Hopefully he's not out very long, because if he is out for a prolonged period of time, then he falls out of the discussion just because injuries are what they are. If he's only out for a week, then he's right there in the swing of things because he's looked great. Brandon Lau and Bo Bichette. So here's the numbers for so far. So Trout is the lowest of the players I'm mentioning, both offensively and the mound, with a 0.4 WAR. I doubt that's going to continue the way that goes. His numbers at the plate are 3.82 or 3.28 average, 8 home runs, 16 RBIs, 1.115 OPS, and a 199 OPS plus. Just dominant numbers from Trout, as you expect. Judge himself is a 1.3 WAR. He's hitting 290, 9 home runs, 20 RBIs, 1.101 OPS, 194 OPS plus. He was the MVP frontrunner. I still think he kind of is right now, unless again he misses a prolonged amount of time. Trout and him are 1 and 2. Brandon Lau. This guy has been a surprise. Everyone knew he had the talent, and now he's showing it. He looked great to start the year. 1.4 WAR. He's hitting 382. He has 5 jacks, 16 ribbies, a 1.058 OPS, and a 189 OPS plus. I'm not sure if you can put him quite there with Judge and Trout yet, but those numbers are fantastic for them, and that's exactly what the Rays need to see out of a guy like Brandon Lau, especially if they want to be competitive for a title and in the AL West. The other guy I want to consider is Bo Bichette. I'm just a big Bo Bichette fan. Blue Jays deserve some love. There was other guys, Laureano and Chapman in Oakland, who deserve a lot of love and definitely some consideration. The only reason I didn't put them quite here yet is because I think them being teammates is going to be hurt for them, right? That happens a lot. You have 2 teammates that probably both MVP candidates, but they still vote from each other. So that's why I don't have Laureano Chapman. I have Bo Bichette there, although those can change at any moment. I think Laureano is definitely an MVP candidate at this moment. Bichette has a 1.1 WAR. He's hitting 352. He only has 4 home runs. That's going to change. 19 RBIs, 1.034 OPS, and a 183 OPS plus. Again, I'm going Trout Judge. I'm probably going to go Trout. He's got to be the favorite to win it all. Don't sleep on Laureano. Judge, we'll see what happens with his injury. So I'm going to go with Trout so far as my AL MVP. I mean, it just, right, death taxes, Mike Trout MVP. The National League side, I'm going to pick a couple of surprise people here as well. So I think the front runner a lot of people would think at the moment is Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts started to struggle a little bit. All right, people thought it was Tatis Jr. for a little bit, which rightfully so. He is in my top 4. Castellanos was for a little bit. He's faded back a little bit. Mookie Betts has caught fire, and he's been just the intangibles. He has a 1.6 WAR, which leads all position players. Right, he's tied for second in all of baseball, up there with Dylan Bundy. Betts has been great for them, and he's turned things around. He's had 3 home run game the other night. He's hitting 319. He's got 7 jacks, 15 RBIs. 1.074 OPS and 189 OPS plus. I think he's got to be the front runner right now. I mean, he's been the best player in the National League so far. Even though some other players have been a little bit more flashy, catching the headlines a little bit from him, he's got to be right there. Another guy that I think people are forgetting about that is right in the mix of things is Bryce Harper. Mostly because that bullpen has looked terrible in Philly. He has a walk-off last night. He leads the league in OPS and OPS plus. And listen to these numbers. You've heard my numbers before, OPS and OPS plus. He has a 1.202 OPS, again, best in baseball. He has a 225 OPS. The next one on this list, behind him, 199, is Trout. He has 225 OPS plus, which is that much better. Harper has been quietly just really, really good, which most years. I don't think he gets the love he deserves because of kind of who he is in his career path. Harper, right there in the mix of things, I think right behind Betts for me. He has an 09 WAR, which kind of hurts him, but he has 35, or he's hitting 356. He only has 4 home runs, which you got to imagine is going to turn around. If those home runs start to turn around, he starts hitting more home runs, he definitely finds himself in the mix. 10 RBIs, again, a little bit low, but the OPS and the OPS plus, so he's hitting the ball hard. He's getting on base. You like to see what Harper's doing right now. The other 2 guys, 2 young guys from the NL West. So 3 of my 4 frontrunners for the National League MVP are from the NL West, which shouldn't be surprised to you because the NL West, again, has been the best division in baseball. The AL Central has an argument. AL Central, NL West. You can flip a coin. For me, I think the NL West right now, although I do like the AL Central. The other 2 guys are Tatis Jr., which I think is no surprise to most people. He's on most people's radar for MVP. Another guy, surprise guy, and I wanted to throw him out here because he deserves the love that he's getting, and that's Mike Yastrzemski. I don't know how you don't consider him in the MVP vote. He has a 1.2 WAR. He's hitting 314. He's only got 4 jacks, which might hurt him, and 12 RBIs, which are a little bit low. But he has a 1.077 OPS and a 197 OPS plus. So his WAR and his OPS plus are looking really good. Same with Harper. You want to see the home runs go up a little bit more to be a legitimate contender, but you have to consider him. And I don't see how anybody could look at what Yastrzemski's doing and not be impressed. Playing in San Francisco with the Giants is going to hurt his case. But he deserves the love he's going to get. Tatis Jr., on the other hand, he's 1.2 WAR. He's hitting 304. He's got 8 home runs, which is a big 18 RBIs, 1.059 OPS, 187 OPS plus. Again, Betts is my pick. Trout is my pick. But these other guys definitely deserve consideration. NL side, other considerations, Chuck Nasty, although playing in Colorado is going to hurt him. Trevor Story's been really good. Jesse Winker's been really good. Those guys deserve to be considered as well. But right now, Betts, Trout, right, 1 and 2, widely considered 1 and 2 as far as best players in all of baseball. Moving on to the Rookie of the Year. So the Rookies of the Years are a little bit harder to pick. I think the AL side's a little bit more clear-cut. There's 3 guys. It's going to be a 3-horse race in the AL side. NL side is still up for anybody. A surprise guy can come up. Gavin Lux hasn't even played in the bigs yet. He could come in, just crush, and still the Rookie of the Year. There's no real clear winner in the NL side. The AL side, there's 3 really good players. So Luis Robert has been everyone's pick to start the year. He was my pick to start the year. But he's probably number 3 for me on this list. So he's hitting 274. He only has 2 home runs. He has 10 RBIs. His OPS is only 754. He has a 108 OPS plus. So his offensive numbers aren't what you thought they would be. But he has a 06 WAR because he's so good defensively. I would imagine his offensive numbers get going, but because he's a rookie, you never really know. His talent dictates that they will get going eventually, if not this year, next year, or the year after. He's still, as far as his career goes, should be fine, barring any injury, knock on wood. So, Luis Robert. But again, he's number 3 for me. Why? Because Kyle Lewis and Randy Dobnak has been that good. Kyle Lewis for Seattle. It's going to hurt him being in Seattle, but he's not going for the MVP, and that's what's going to help him. And the Rookie of the Year looked a little bit differently than the MVP. But he's hitting 338. He has 4 home runs, 14 RBIs, a 918 OPS, and a 160 OPS plus a 0.9 WAR. I mean, he's beating Robert in every category, and most of them aren't even close. So Kyle Lewis has to be the clear favorite right now for the AL Rookie of the Year. The only one that's going to challenge him is Randy Dobnak. Dobnak has been great for the Twins. People have talked about him being a former Uber driver. Last year he came on, but he didn't qualify as a rookie, so he's still a rookie this year. He pitched in the postseason, got knocked around a little bit, but he was pretty good for them in the regular season. He's been just great. He's 3-1. He has a 0.90 ERA. He has 11 strikeouts. He has a 0.90 WHIP. He's pitching 20 innings and has 0.8 WAR. And I know you're hearing 0.9 ERA, 0.9 WHIP. You think, why isn't he in the MVP or the Cy Young Award race? Well, he doesn't have the innings, he doesn't have the strikeouts, doesn't have the WAR, what you want to see from a Cy Young Award candidate. But he continues down this path, he might be your Rookie of the Year. I'm going to pick Kyle Lewis for now, but Dobnak has been really good. Robert has a chance to come back and be in it. He's not out of this thing yet. That's why he's considered here. It's going to be a 3-horse race. Right now, Kyle Lewis leads the way for me. The NL side, as I mentioned, a little bit tougher. I'm going to pick 3 guys here, but again, there's other guys you could probably throw in there because everyone's really close. Gavin Lux, still not out of it, was the pick to start the year, the heavy favorite to start the year. Still not going to count him out of it. Dusty May is one of the 3 for me. So Dusty May is also a Dodger. He is 1-1. He has a 2.75 ERA. 17 Ks, which the Ks are going to go up as he learns to finish people off. He's looked better in his last few starts. He has a 1.169 WHIP, a little bit higher than you like to see, but I'm sure that's going to go down. 19.2 innings pitched and a 0.3 WAR. Again, these guys haven't been as good as the AL side, so bear with me through this. Cronenworth for the Padres also has to be considered at this moment. He's hitting 325. He only has 2 home runs and 4 RBIs, which isn't great, but he has a 1.016 OPS and a 174 OPS plus a 0.8 WAR. And if you're looking at those last 3 numbers, they're just as good, if not better, than Kyle Lewis is. So that's why he has to be considered. He's just not a power hitter. He plays great defensively, though. So Cronenworth definitely in the mix for Rookie of the Year. Andres Jimenez, shortstop for the Mets. He's considered here for a couple different reasons, but you don't feel comfortable with him here. Again, all these numbers leave a guy like Gavin Lux to come in and just steal the Rookie of the Year and run away with it. You can even look at a guy and a Keyboom, right? Connor Keyboom in the Nationals. He can get hot and steal it. There's no runaway here. So Jimenez, you don't even know if he's going to be the shortstop here in a couple weeks as they get healthier with Rosario coming back and all those different guys. He's hitting 286. He has 0 home runs, 2 RBIs, 715 OPS, a 101 OPS plus, and a 0.5 WAR. I had to fit a fifth guy in there. He hasn't looked terrible. He's been good defensively for them. He has provided defensively. He's probably the best of the group. Although Cronenworth is pretty good and May's pretty good. NL's harder to pick. I'm gonna keep Gavin Lux. I'm gonna stay with Gavin Lux just because I don't feel comfortable in any of these three right here. I think he's gonna come back in a week and then he's just gonna dominate through the end of the year, and he's gonna steal the Rookie of the Year because again, no one's running away with it, even though he's given him the opportunity. So we're gonna go with Kyle Lewis and Gavin Lux. Manager of the Year. I think this one's pretty easy for me to pick. I'm gonna go Bob Melvin with the A's. Seems like the obvious pick in the American League side. There are some really good managers out there that deserve a look, right? Especially as the year goes on. If Detroit and Baltimore start playing or continue to be in the mix of things, they might find themselves with their manager winning it. I'm going Bob Melvin with the A's so far. I'm going to go with David Ross and the Chicago Cubs. And he's finally getting the potential out of the Cubs, which is big for them. So Bob Melvin, David Ross, as far as manager of the year go. That'll do it for me here in this episode. Remember to like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit that notification. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up. That little bell right there will be the notifications. Go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening to it on your podcast form, but I should know most of you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, leave a written review if you're on there. Just leave a review. It just goes a long ways. Please, please, please leave a written review. I say it every episode. I'm going to continue to say it. I leave a review. Overcast, you can subscribe to it. You can leave reviews there. Spotify, same thing. They all go a long way in helping to grow the show, helping promote the show, helping get the show out there. So I look forward to continue this as we go down this weird season, and I'll talk to you guys soon.